It's quite an emotional experience, the book. And the final 2 pages of the book will have you in tears, so make sure you have a box of tissues ready. Because
Mark, welcome back to Jersey. It's nice to see you again. I think it's about a year or longer that you and I have been talking about this, but I know it's longer than that you've been focusing on your current book. When did that date from? When did you first hear the name Tuula Höök?
Thanks, Tom. Yeah, it's great to be back. So I've been looking at the story since the summer of 2023. So we're coming up on 3 years. I initially had the idea for a book in 2023, initially about a series of murders on Jersey, a short story collection, but I came across the story of Tuula and was so fascinated by it. I thought, I'm going to look into this story and see if there's enough material for an entire book about Tuula. So really the process started then, but it's been a very long process.
And I think it's fair to say that the nature and the scale of what you were aiming to do in 2023 has evolved a fair bit in the 3 years since then.
Yeah, it has. So it's been a roller coaster of a journey. Initially, first of all, I thought there might not even be enough material for a book in this story. There are a few articles and podcasts that have been done on Tuula's case before, but they always tail off. They don't have too much information in them. So I thought the only way I can really write this story is if I have the cooperation of the state's police here and of Tuula's family in in Finland. That was really the only way that we could come up with enough material to do this. So I had to go about the process of trying to get their cooperation first. So that took a little while. I approached the state's police. To my surprise, they were actually willing to help and were genuinely interested in helping, which I was actually quite surprised about. So I think that they felt another approach to the story, another outlet, another media outlet for the story would perhaps recreate interest in Tuula's case again. They put me in touch with Tuula's family, who agreed to help me. They were very gracious about it, considering the things that have happened to them in the past. So over the years, they've had lots of approaches from what you might call tabloid newspapers, sensationalist newspapers in Finland, knocking on their door. And their family have had enough of that, Tuula's sister is elderly now and she doesn't really want that anymore. So they were willing to help me with certain criteria, that I was respectful to the story, and we agreed that I would make the story about Tuula as well and not just about her case, which was something I wanted to do anyway.
Yeah, and you've got to that has reached the stage where later this month the book's being launched, and you have a relative of Tuula's joining for that event as a sign of the family's involvement in the project, I guess.
Yeah. So Tuula's niece is coming along, which I'm so pleased about, and she has helped me so much with the book, and it's been an emotional journey, I guess, for both of us. The story I wanted to tell was Tuula's story, okay? And once you get involved, you find yourself deep in there. You can't avoid it. And her family obviously have very precious memories of Tuula, and they want her memory protected as well. And I wanted to protect her memory, but also build a legacy for Tuula, so she's not just remembered as a victim of a murder, but she had this amazing personality, and she would have gone on to achieve so many things, and she was a force of nature, and I want to bring that out in the book, which I hope I've done.
And you also, I think, gained that impression through talking to people in Jersey who knew her in 1965 and 1966 when she was here. Yeah,
that's correct. I did. I was really pleased. So I met a friend of Tuula's from the mid-60s here in Jersey, and she told me that even with all Tuula's obvious attributes, she was still an amazing person, and there was still more to Tuula than met the eye. And I've tried to dig deep and find out what that was, the things that were going on behind the scenes, which helped make Tuula this real force of nature. She was so determined to achieve what she wanted in life, and she was almost there. That was one of the tragedies of her murder. She was so close to achieving what she wanted, which was to get to Paris and become part of the fashion industry. She was so tantalisingly close to that. And who knows what she would have gone on to achieve, which I guess is the tragedy of any young person that's murdered.
And you talked about the timing of this, and the police. The pleasant surprise that the police were willing to help. Was the timing good? If you'd been digging around in the 70s or 80s, there'd be people who had worked on it who might be a bit defensive. And equally, if you were doing this book in 2046 and coming to Jersey, you wouldn't have found anybody who knew Tuula. So you were in that midpoint where people still remembered the case, they remembered her, but you were far enough that there was a distance after it that maybe it wasn't too raw.
Yeah. I guess actually that it's probably worked out for the best on that basis, because this year, as we know, is the 60th anniversary of Tuula's murder. Last week was also would have been her 80th birthday. So there are lots of anniversaries this year, but as you say, none of the original investigating officers on the case are still alive now. So yes, there aren't those egos to bruise, but also negatively, there aren't those people to talk to about the case. There are surprisingly still a few people around who knew Tuula. I didn't think I'd find as many people still alive who actually knew her, but there are still a few around, and there are plenty of people on the island who remember the case as well, so that's been helpful. But as you say, probably if we'd left it another 10 years or so, there wouldn't be anybody left, and the resources available to me would have been far more limited.
And having got those the two key aspects that you said you would have probably not proceeded without, or it would have been almost impossible, i.e. the police and Tuula's family both being prepared to work with you on this. How did things then evolve? I know you've made a number of trips over here, and you lots of information that you didn't have at the outset has come out in the course of I suppose around 2 years at least, up to the point that you were putting the finishing touches to the book at the back end of last year. Yeah.
So it's been very difficult actually to collate all the information that I wanted. It's taken a long time. The evidence around Tuula's murder is limited to eyewitnesses who saw Tuula at the bus stop, to a witness description of the car seen in the field. At the time, just after she'd been murdered, a witness drove past and saw a car in the field. There was some initial discrepancy about that witness sighting, but that's been sorted out now. There isn't really much forensic evidence left other than the evidence that was taken at the time. The police did a huge amount of groundwork in finding out Tuula's movements in the few weeks before her murder and on the night of her murder. There was a huge amount of work went into that, and that information has been useful. I was able to, with your help actually through the JEP, was to get hold of people who were witnesses in 1967, who gave statements to the police, and I was able to speak to them again, and they were able to go over their stories with me again, their sightings of Tuula or things that happened to them in the weeks before and after, which are related to the story. So that was interesting. That helped me a lot. And I soon discovered that the key to this was the car. So a huge amount of time has been spent on trying to locate the car and narrow down the car from a long list of cars, which could have been the car seen in the field. But even that brought up problems of its own, because the witness who saw the car, it was a Friday night in December, it was raining, it was a miserable night, it was foggy and misty, and obviously when you're a witness, you're not expecting to be a witness to a murder, so when you drive past a parked car, you don't really take that much notice of it, do you? I could have walked past a car this morning on my way here that may be involved in a murder, but I wouldn't have even noticed, because you don't find out the fact until later, and then you have to try and remember something that you saw. So initially I was quite sceptical about the witness sighting of the car, because I thought, how could somebody remember a car that well? And then when I found out what the car was and I looked into the details of the car, it was very distinctive. So I had to change my opinion, and I thought, yeah, actually you would remember that car if you'd seen it, and the unusual place in which it was seen as well. So I started from there. I worked with the police. We went through lists of cars, and then of course we came across another problem, which was, although this car is very distinctive, there are some other cars that are similar, or at least would appear similar in the dark, in a brief glance at night. So that was another thing we had to iron out and narrow down. So I spent a lot of time doing that until I found the car that I wanted, and then put some details together from that.
And that was part of an evolving theory that you had about what had happened, and that led you to names of or to identifying people who either you thought may have been involved, or people who were suggesting to you, and the process moved on from that point, I imagine.
It did, yeah. So I set myself some key questions. I found with writing true crime detection, it's probably very similar to being in the police. It isn't always the answer that's the important factor. It's the question. You've got to get the question right. Unless you've got the right question, you don't find the right solution. So I set myself a series of questions, and the key question really is, why did Tuula get in this person's car? And that is crucial. If you can find the answer to that, that takes you a huge way towards finding the answer to the problem. So Tuula, obviously, she was gregarious, she was friendly, but her family are totally insistent that she would not have got into a car with a stranger. They'd coached her on that before she travelled abroad to work. So she'd travelled abroad previously. She'd worked in Germany in the summer of 1964. And it's something that's encouraged in Finland for girls or young people, to travel abroad and work, to broaden their horizons and learn another language, that kind of thing. So it's very much approved of and very common. But she was coached on not getting into strangers' cars. Now, something made her get into a car that night. So I had to ask myself, why would she do that? And there's sort of two ends to the spectrum with that. So she either completely ignored the advice she was given and any possible danger signals and got into a complete stranger's car. The other end of that spectrum, of that scale, is that she got into a car of somebody she knew really, really well. So she had no qualms at all about getting into the car. And then somewhere in the middle is the more likely situation, or the more likely scenario, is that she got into a car of somebody she knew just well enough to trust them to get in. So it was probably somebody that she recognised or had some familiarity with. But that person wasn't worried enough to think that he would be connected with Tuula afterwards. So if it had been somebody who knew her really, really well, for instance, and she got into that car, the chances are the police would have found out about that relationship. Obviously, if it's a complete stranger at the other end of the scale, it's very hard to find out about the relationship. But I think the one in the middle is where the answer lies.
Yeah, and that I suppose, having identified that that potential, you were also finding out other things about what she was doing and who she knew in Jersey, and the picture was being coloured in to an extent that way as well, was it?
Yeah, it was. So Tuula in 1965, so she was here, she worked for the summer of 1965, then went back to Finland to finish her matriculation exams at school and then graduate. And she then came back to Jersey to work in the summer of 66. So her first summer here, she went out far more than she did in her second summer, as in she went to nightclubs and the beach and shopping and everything. The second summer, she didn't go out as much. She doesn't seem to have been quite as happy in her second summer here as she did in the first summer. Now, I've been lucky enough that the family have given me access to Tuula's diaries, So she was a prodigious diary keeper and notebook keeper. She wrote lots and lots of letters. I've been lucky enough to read lots of those letters, see her diaries. And she wrote her diaries, bizarrely, partly in Finnish, partly in English, and sometimes she popped into other languages as well. I think she was just honing her language skills, if you like. And of course, those diaries are handwritten as well, and they're tiny, tiny notebooks about this big. And she's packed notes and writing in hundreds of words on each page, so it's really difficult to decipher sometimes. So that's taken a long time. So I've had the help of Tuula's family to go through these diaries. Yeah, and we've learned a lot about what she did and what she was like and her personality and the things that were worrying her. And that's led us to avenues of her private life, which, weren't public at the time.
And that includes that she was, you believe, in a relationship during the second of her 2 years in Jersey.
Yeah, well, actually, it's we think it started in the first year that she was here. So she entered, probably unwisely, into a relationship with an older married man, and I think it was, they were happy to do that. I'm guessing he tried to keep it secret from his wife. They went out. They were seen together at a nightclub in Jersey. She mentions this person in letters to her sisters, but she does not mention this person in her diaries. So I'm thinking that she had a pact with this man that she would not mention his name in her diaries, nor to anybody else. But this person was very distinctive, was well known on the island, and had a very distinctive car as well. Now, I think that part of Tuula's reason for wanting to come back to Jersey in 1966 was in the hope that she would see this person again. But it doesn't look like she did, because her attitude changed slightly in 1966, and I think something happened there that she wasn't able to see this person again, or if she did, not as much as previously. And then she moved on to another boyfriend. But I think that the person who killed her had a connection to the married man that she was seeing. So I don't think it was this married man that killed her, but I think he had a connection to the person that murdered her. And that person, through this connection, knew Tuula just well enough for her to get into his car. Now, I'm assuming that he didn't mean to kill her. I don't think that was his initial intent, because if you have a car as distinctive as he did, you don't stop at a busy bus stop on a really busy road to pick up somebody with the premeditation of murdering them. I suspect it was a situation and a circumstance that spiraled out of control very, very quickly.
And in terms of presumably initially you didn't know much about this associate of the married man, and that was something you were able to find out more detail, and again colour in or flesh out your theory a bit more.
Yeah, I was. So this person worked for the older married man before Tuula's murder, and continued to work for him afterwards for many, many years, up until his death. And he seems to have been granted a huge number of favours by this man, which start within 2 weeks of Tuula's murder. Favours which seem to be beyond coincidental. And the interesting thing is, you would not put these two people together. So the person I think killed Tuula and Tuula's secret boyfriend, there is nothing that would put these two people together socially, financially, from their backgrounds. There's nothing that these two people have in common. So it seems the only thing these two people had in common was Tuula, and perhaps a very dark pact that exists between the two of them after her murder. And it seems to make a lot of sense, and it's really difficult to see that it could have been anybody else when you learn the facts that are in the book. And I was open. I was open to looking at other people as being Tuula's murderer. I didn't want to shy away from that. I didn't want to be closed and stick to one person as my only person of interest. I had other names suggested to me, and I examined all of those names as carefully as I could. But there was always at least one fatal objection to it being that other person. My prime suspect, there is nothing that acts as an objection to him being her killer.
And without going through line by line, one by one of the various other people that were mentioned to you, I know that and in our coverage, names a name that has come up a lot and has reached your ears a lot was the Paynell, the Beast of Jersey, who was among many you considered, because you just said you considered all the names that were thrown at you. Just briefly, what was the sort of the process of looking at how he might have been involved or was or wasn't? Yeah,
so there are two interesting things. Firstly, lots of people already assumed that Edward Paynell was Tuula's killer, and in fact had already been proven to be so. They had somewhere in the back of their mind that someone somewhere had told them Paynell killed Tuula, but that, of course, has never been proven. He possibly could have been the person who killed her. I certainly wouldn't have ruled him out. He isn't, as I said, my prime suspect. There are a few coincidences with his previous attacks on people, such as he had picked up a couple of adult victims from bus stops, and we assume Tuula was picked up from the bus stop in Georgetown. He abducted victims, but as far as we know, he never killed anybody. The crime scene at Tuula's murder clearly spiraled out of control very, very quickly. And without wishing to go into too much detail about Paynell, his crimes were very controlling and coordinated and pre-planned. Tuula's almost certainly wasn't.
Yes, interesting. And returning to your theory that evolved with the married man, his associate, you've clearly got to a stage where you knew who these people were, and I guess that when you're getting close to finalising a book, you're asking yourself and your agent and about how you will tackle this. Are you going to name them? Is one matter.
Yeah. So the person that I believe killed Tuula is now dead. So that person cannot defend themselves in court, so they could never face trial. So it would probably be irresponsible of me to name that person in the book. And also that person has children still left alive on the island. And the married boyfriend of Tuula's also still has children left alive on the island. So it isn't a responsible thing for me to do, to name that person. And nothing can be served by me naming that person anyway. But the information is there in the book. You can read the story. You'll find out what happened to Tuula. There are clues in there, and some people will be able probably to work out who both of these men are. I've tried to be responsible with that information. I've passed that information to the police, and I'm going to ask people who read the book to be responsible with that information as well. But I think it brings closure to the story, both for Tuula's family and for me, investigating it, because it's been a journey for me too. So I've tried to be responsible as I can with the information, but also telling the story, and really, I think finding out what happened to Tuula on that night and in the days and weeks leading up to her murder.
And I guess that's you mentioned off air before we started that's something that when the launch event later this month, you'll be trying to stress to attendees that's the approach you've taken yourself, and while you can't control them, you'd hope that other people would sort of recognise that.
That's right. I mean, with the nature of social media in the world today, people will speculate. I'm asking people to be responsible with the information. And as I said, it's simply because I don't know what can be served by me naming this person. I know who it is. The police know who it is. But we can't take that information any further because there can't be a case against that person now anyway. But it does offer some closure for Tuula's family and for those who wanted to know an answer, at least as to what happened to Tuula on that night and why she got in the car with this person, and probably what happened to her in the field. I mean, everything I say in the book is based on evidence. okay, any speculation in there is speculation from me based on as much evidence as I've got. So if I'm speculating on events, it's based on perhaps autopsy findings or witness, so it's I think it's a responsible book, and I'm really proud of it, and I'm really pleased with it. And it's been a difficult thing to do. It's taken me the best part of 2 years to write the book, and it's been honed all the time, and things have been changed and updated as new information's come in all the time. And I think we've got there in the end.
And in terms of that, we've touched already on the killing itself, your investigation into who it might have been, and more about Tuula and her hopes and ambitions, and what she where her life may have progressed if it hadn't ended that night. That there are other sort of wider themes about Jersey that have come up, which I believe you weren't really necessarily intending to be tackling at the outset, but just have emerged during the course of your work.
So my parents came to Jersey for their honeymoon in the early 60s, and they fell in love with the island, and they came back every year for many years on holiday. And my affection for Jersey comes from them. So I came here, and part of me coming here was after my mum died a couple of years ago, was to place a plaque on a park bench in Jersey, close to where they stayed on their honeymoon. And so I have a lot of affection for the island, and clearly so did Tuula. But the thing that I discovered was, obviously lots and lots of people from the UK mainland came to Jersey for their honeymoons and holidays in the 60s. And it was really well known for it. It was a tax haven. If you came here, people from the UK mainland used to claim the married person's allowance, come to Jersey, have honeymoons here. The States of Jersey government handed out flowers and souvenir ashtrays to people who came here. They held honeymoon balls in the West Park Pavilion. It was a big thing. But nobody on the UK mainland knew anything about the amount of crime that was going on in Jersey during the 60s and into the 1970s as well. And that forms a huge theme in the book. So obviously you had Mr. Paynell, who was an ever-present kind of shadow hanging over the island in the 60s. There were lots and lots of other crimes. There was the beginnings of organised crime and drugs, and none of these things were known on the UK mainland. And even the story of Tuula's murder didn't merit much more than a few lines in the UK national papers, but disappeared so quickly. So within 3 weeks of Tuula's death, the story had been dropped on the UK mainland altogether. And it's only here in Jersey that the story continued to be told. So that made it difficult to find things out about Tuula's case, of course. But it's really indicative of what I've been trying to do with the story. So that story, that's another major theme in the book, is the fact that the crime levels on Jersey throughout the 60s and 70s were just not known on the UK mainland. Now, a question that comes from that, a really important question, is, were girls like Tuula that were coming here to work in the hotels and bars in the mid-60s, coming from European countries, were they aware of the crimes that were going on? Now, I thought I'd ask myself, if I had a teenage daughter and I'd been aware of Mr. Paynell, would I have allowed her to go to Jersey to work in the summer? So clearly it wasn't in the interests of business owners in Jersey for that information to be known in Europe, and that's a key question, So that's come out in the book as well, yeah.
Yeah, no, it's evolved into all sorts of interesting and probably to you at the outset unexpected themes. I'm sure that's the case. Unbelievably so, yeah. As I say, this theme of other crimes going on Jersey has been a huge part of the book, but that has become an obstacle over the years to the solving of Tuula's murder, because it almost seems that at every key opportunity to look at the case again, another major crime has happened on Jersey, and that has swallowed up all of the police's resources, thus meaning Tuula's case has had to be kicked back again into the long grass for another few years. And that's a theme that has continued from the 1960s onwards. And we're now within yes, as you said earlier, 6 or 7 months of the 60th anniversary. That's the 60th anniversary year, and it's coming back to Jersey for the launch event later this month. Must be. It's not just going to be a normal day, a normal week for you. I'm sure you've mentioned it being an emotional journey for a number of people concerned. But I guess also you must be looking forward to getting it out there after all this time.
I am, yeah. So it's a mix, because a book launch is usually sort of quite a joyous affair. It's almost a little party. You're launching your new book. You're very proud of it. But this is both that, but it's also quite a somber occasion as well, I guess. So I've got to find that right balance. To launch the book, something which I'm proud of, but I'm not there just to boast about my new book. I'm there to honour Tuula's legacy, if you like, in front of her family, and tell some of her story as well, tell a little bit about her life and what she would have achieved. And also on the night, I can't say anything about it now, but there will be an unveiling of something on the night as well, which is part of Tuula's story and will help carry her legacy forward. But I'm not allowed to say anything about it yet.
Great. Well, we're looking forward to that event, Mark, and ahead of that, we have some extracts that will be running in the paper in the build up to the event on May the 21st, Thursday, May the 21st, the launch event. So looking forward to all of that, and it's been fascinating to get inside the cover of the book a little bit over these past few minutes, and I really appreciate you coming in and sharing it all with us.
Thank you. Yeah, and it's been a pleasure, and your help has been so useful. And the book it's quite an emotional experience. The book, and the final 2 pages of the book will have you in tears. So make sure you have a box of tissues ready, because I've read and reread the final few pages so many times whilst writing it. And it brings a tear to my eye every single time.
Gosh, forewarned is forearmed with a box of Kleenex. Thanks, Mark, for your time and the warning and your cooperation with all of this. It's been really interesting. Thanks again.
Thank you. Thanks, Tom. Thanks.
Okay, cheers.
Thanks.